That was the most X-Men-y thing I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of X-Men content. It was glorious. It is perhaps the best experience I've had as an X-Men fan since X2. Respect for X-Men Days of Future Past, but this is up there with X2. And in some ways, I feel it's even better than X2. I mean, it's just, if you want to know why the X-Men are such a great comic book property or story, a great IP, to use Hollywood lingo, you got your answer right here. Oh my God, it's so good! Lately, Marvel has been hiring non-fans to adapt its classic stories. And as we learned, even going so far as to tell them not to read the source material. What the heck? But you see what happens when you have someone adapting these stories who loves and respects them. And considering that that's what originally set Kevin Feige himself apart from the rest of Hollywood, and we're continuing to see things like not just X-Men 97, but also Ryan Reynolds' work with Deadpool, how is that not the strategy for every single MCU or every single comic book project overall, in general? Get people who love the source material. I mean, because it really makes a difference. There is so much to discuss in this supersized, it was like a true half hour season finale. Oh, so good. But let's start with the ending and clear setup for season 2, which we should be getting fairly quickly because they're currently writing season 3. So that's exciting. It might seem like the X-Men are scattered to the winds of time, but they're actually all linked to Apocalypse. Not this guy again. But you know what? If anyone can finally do Apocalypse right, it's the X-Men 97 team. So yes, while some of you guessed that Onslaught might be the next big bad, and the seed for that storyline was likely planted here, we'll discuss that. First up is Apocalypse. All right, so I would love it if, by the way, they did at least 1 or 2 episodes in season 2 of the alternate reality story, Age of Apocalypse. Again, as I told you, it was a whole year's worth of storytelling in the comics. It was phenomenal. And considering this creative team's, again, love and respect for the source material, I'm sure it's on their radar. That might be even why they're doing Apocalypse, so they can do an Age of Apocalypse group of episodes. So I would love it if that happened, and I think there's a strong chance that it will. I wonder how many episodes they'll dare to do in that timeline. I would love it if like half of season 2 was Age of Apocalypse, but we'll see. But it would be amazing. But right now, with the season finale, this is the setup. So the blue and gold teams, well, most of them converged on Asteroid M. That Trojan horse line was so you beast. It was funny, smart, and referenced the classics. And after saving humanity yet again, I was going to say they saved humanity from itself, but that was a mess. I think that everybody had a hand in. And by the way, another great line so many great lines this whole season, but this episode. When Bastion says humanity would rather die than have children like us. Not only was that a great line, but I'm going to talk about the emotions of this show, but I would suspect that a number of people watching really could relate to that line. It's very powerful stuff. So Asteroid M explodes. Well, it kind of turned into pixie dust. I was like, what the heck happened up there? And Bishop explains, revealing to Forge that the X-Men did not die, but instead were pulled through time. And as we then discover, one group went to the past and the other to the future. Oh, I love this. This is so great. This is so incredibly clever. So the past is Apocalypse, aka En-Sabanur's origin story in ancient Egypt, where he is often believed to be the very first mutant. It's either him or Namor, although I think ancient Egypt wins. But, they're some of the first mutants. It was interesting because at the bar at the beginning of this episode, they talked about there not being a ton of mutants. And, Jean also references that more mutants are being born every day. And so you go back to like Mutant Zero, which is En-Sabanur, which is a perfect, I think, evolution of that conversation and the exploration of that. Now, do the X-Men here even know who Apocalypse is? I'm guessing based on the look they gave each other, they kind of do. I mean, he's been shown in the opening credits several times, and Cable should certainly, of course, know who he is. Oh, for many reasons, as we quickly find out. Because in the future, this is the famous comic that I told you about. Again, this team knows their X-Men, and this is another fabulous story. And I'm so glad that they're doing it, or at least going to do it a little bit. The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, where they're pulled into the future by their daughter to raise their son. Same styling, everything. And Apocalypse was the villain of this story as well. Then, to top it all off, we're in the present as well, in the end credit scene. And we see Apocalypse on Genosha digging up a tattered playing card, and not just any playing card, it's the Queen of Hearts, which of course is Gambit's card for Rogue. Their love. Their love survives, which is a clear reference also, though, with Apocalypse finding it, to when he turned Gambit into one of his 4 horsemen. The Horsemen of Death, that's who Gambit was. Many of the X-Men have served Apocalypse and been transformed, often into death. Most notably, of course, Angel, who became Archangel. Sometimes the change is permanent, sometimes they go back. Cyclops was temporarily the host for Apocalypse. Apocalypse, he's dabbled in a number of X-Men, literally. But yes, Apocalypse can bring back the dead. He's done it before in the comics, so this is how Gambit comes back. This is how Gambit fans win. I wonder what he'll look like. Probably like he did in the comic. All right, so also in the present, by the way, that's one of Apocalypse's bases in the blue area of the moon where Rogue and Bastion are fighting. The blue area of the moon is very famous in Marvel Comics. It was established by the Kree and the Skrulls. The Inhumans, of course, have therefore been there. The Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and, speaking of the X-Men, that's where Jean first died as the Phoenix. So, pretty famous location. You could have quite the tour there. So there you have it. Apocalypse is in the past, future, and present. It's beautiful. It's poetic, especially for an immortal character, and a very clever way to bring all of these iconic stories together and give them more focus and power. Because, let's be honest, he might be a famous X-Men villain, but the Apocalypse storylines have always been lacking. And while these are all famous ones, they've never been pulled together in this way. So if the X-Men 97 team can reinvent Apocalypse, streamline him, and finally make him have, work, that would be an impressive feat indeed. I'm sure there's a lone Apocalypse fan who down below is like, what are you talking about? Apocalypse is amazing, but your numbers are few. All right, by the way, where's Storm? Forge was like, not Storm, and we're like, where is she? I hope she's with the Egypt group, as she, of course, was born in Egypt, so having her return home, so to speak, would be very interesting for her character. Maybe she's in Egypt present day. Maybe she's going to deal with, Apocalypse in the present, because, you're going to split your X-Men up to past, present, and future to deal with Apocalypse. Wouldn't it be interesting if they fought him all through the timeline simultaneously? That would be great. All right, but also, speaking of missing characters, where are Wolverine and Morph? Let's talk about this. I told you all season I was sensing a vibe, and a vibe there is. Now, I'm not sure how Wolverine feels. He was calling out for Jean, but I thought Morph had a crush on Wolverine, and this confirmed it. And it was very bold of this show, as well as extremely well done and moving, to have Morph find a way to say it as Jean that he loves Wolverine. Because surely he is talking about himself, not just loving Wolverine, but not wanting to lose him. That was just really beautiful and complex and sophisticated. Morph copies not just at where other characters look, but their powers. So I think he would have been helpful in trying to keep Asteroid M from crashing into the Earth and creating another Extinction level event like with the dinosaurs. But yet he refused to leave Wolverine's side. That's love. That's love. Are they somewhere lost in time together? That would be amazing. I don't think this show will ever put them in an actual relationship, but I think it is very refreshing and current to have Morph dealing with his feelings. And hey, I spotted North Star, an openly gay mutant, and also there's Iceman, who has come out as gay in the comics, and we haven't seen him on the show yet, despite him being one of the original X-Men. Maybe once Morph sorts through his feelings for Wolverine and comes to terms with it, he'll realize he has other options, unless he's totally into bears like Wolverine. Well then, someone's gonna have to give him Hercules contact information. But wait a minute! Hercules dated Wolverine in an alternate timeline, so maybe there is hope for Morph's unrequited love. And perhaps this flirtation is a reference to that Hercules-Wolverine storyline. That would be so meta. That would be very, very impressive. But I thought that was a great moment. All right, so why not do Onslaught when, again, the seed has so clearly been planted? Now, for those of you not familiar with Onslaught, although some of you last week were like, Onslaught, Grace, Onslaught. So let's talk Onslaught. In the comics, Xavier was so angry when Magneto ripped the adamantium from Wolverine's bones that he shut down Magneto's mind. But while he was in there, Magneto's anger infected Xavier's mind, creating a villainous alter ego, Onslaught, who eventually revealed himself many, comics later. So look for hints of Onslaught in season 2 with Xavier acting all weird. And maybe the idea of this character called Onslaught, but we don't know who it is. It's Xavier. And then maybe Onslaught is the big bad for season 3. Or maybe at the end of season 2, he's who's able to take down Apocalypse. Because, he's a combination in many ways of Xavier and Magneto, and that would be a very powerful villain. Here, though, Xavier saves Magneto's mind instead of shutting it down, but he is still literally submerged in Magneto's pain. So I think there's a very good chance that he got infected, ironically, as he helped Magneto overcome that very pain. However, with season 1 so much about Xavier and Magneto, Xavier versus Magneto, I can see why season 2 would want to take a little bit of a break and focus on Apocalypse. The Xavier and Magneto scenes in this season finale, though, were peak X-Men. My goodness, I've seen these characters so many times in so many different mediums, but this might be their best depiction yet. A post-war bar, it's a European setting, so it seems post-World War II, yet the song is from 1965, Turn, 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 to Everything There Is a Season. That's the song, which I guess should have given Magneto his first clue that they were in his mind and not in the real world. But that song is an amazing choice. It's expensive to pay for the rights for songs, but worth every penny here. Because not only did it not fit the time period, which gives the astral plane or this scene like an eerie quality, but what the song is saying, it's the more things change, the more they stay the same, and yet there is always a new opportunity to maybe change things, right? Because it's cyclical. But while the song talks of war, it also, of course, ultimately calls for peace. Yet the wheel is still turning, turning, turning. That's why that bar was like all wars to some degree, right? And there were Xavier and Magneto representing peace and war. Oh my gosh! Locked in eternal struggle like Magneto and Xavier themselves. It's beautiful, man! The idea also that one of them bends minds while the other bends metal. I have never realized before that their powers complement each other. I knew their ideologies were two different sides of the same coin, but it never struck me that it was their power sets as well. Oh my goodness! But not only that, but they represent what they stand for, as I said, peace and war, minds and steel. This show was able to add new insight to characters that were created and have been very much so explored since the 1960s. Again, kudos to the show. Golf clap. And by the way, the 1960s, the same time that song came out. Magneto and Xavier actually were 2 years earlier, but it's the same time period. In Magneto's mind is a raging sea of pain, and on one of those ships is not just Rogue, but his children. I know you spotted them. We see Pietro and Wanda on one side and Polaris on the other. But why are their faces not visible? We've seen Pietro and Polaris on this show already, morph as Pietro at one point. I believe it was in Madripoor. And then also Polaris in the future described by Cable, right? No Wanda, although we do learn that she is off-world. Perhaps their faces are in shadow because Magneto is not aware of their existence, but I think it's perhaps even more likely because their relationships have been so badly damaged. Magneto is not a great papa. He's not a great lover either. As he points out, Rogue left him for Gambit. Everyone leaves him, he cries, which makes it all the more moving that Xavier is willing to go down with the ship if necessary. I did think many times they might smooch. I was like, I'm picking up kind of a vibe here as well. The X-Men are very much so many different groups. Now, they say that hurt people hurt others, but Xavier, a teacher and a man of peace, and was willing to stay with Eric. And maybe that's another reason that X-Men 97 did not have him shut down Magneto's mind post the Wolverine assault like it was done in the comics, because they're, again, playing up, so often Xavier is just like this figurehead. But I really love how this show has fleshed him out as a character, and I think done a tremendous honor to the profession of teaching as well. Because it goes to great lengths time and time again to portray Xavier with the qualities of a teacher and to really make you think about what qualities, so often, except if you are a teacher, you often think of your teacher only so much in the context of yourself, because that's how you relate to them and, you move on. That's like the teacher-student relationship. But I love this perspective from the teacher side of things. It's just really, it's blowing my mind, man. I love it. In fact, X-Men 97 has done a great job giving emotional depth to all of the characters. I mean, sure, the soap opera elements remain, but X-Men 97 works very hard to explain its characters' motivations and is able to do so powerfully, but also succinctly. In other words, no monologuing, which is no small feat. With just 1 or 2 lines, you're like, damn, I get exactly what you're saying, and yet you've opened up my mind to a whole new layer of meaning. I mean, it's incredible stuff. I also think that's why X-Men 97 is striking such a chord with its adult audience, giving voice to how many today feel. With a world more angry, divided, and isolated than ever thanks to technology, both the advancements and how it's being used. The X-Men are also, because of that, the world that's been created, more relevant than ever to perhaps the biggest number of people ever. I mean, it's always, I think, represented special interest groups, but those special interest groups have grown exponentially over the years. And I also think, even what you would maybe at one point have called mainstream groups has been fractured and feels that they're, having a difficult time. And so it's just really fascinating. So I think the X-Men are really relatable to everyone. And I love that the show is not afraid to go there. And there's even more to discuss. Speaking of technology, it was no accident that Bastion, who represents technology, was said to be exploiting people's anger and hate to turn them into weapons, which, what do you know, a lot of people feel social media, in particular in technology, is doing for reals today. The fight between Rogue and Bastion was phenomenal, and it was great to finally see her get a target that, with no question, we all agree, she could let loose on. You can see how powerful she is. Like that sonic slap, loved it! Jubilee also showed off some impressive moves, not just melting, but slicing and dicing Bastion, and Sunspot finally powered up and looked good doing it. But to me, the most moving use of power was Cyclops, perhaps because we saw it at its most, turned up all the way and turned off. Oh my God, it was incredible! Sure that he was on a suicide mission, he let loose on Asteroid M when they were trying to keep it from falling. His full optic blast with tears in his eyes. Following powerfully right after Jean had allowed him to look at his son with his depowered eyes, which they shared. Cable has his father's eyes. But it was Nathan has Scott Summers' eyes, because you saw their humanity. Oh, it was also a great line when Bastion asked, laughing, if the X-Men were trying to appeal to his humanity, because he, of course, had rejected that part of himself, which ultimately was his undoing. Don't lose your humanity, man! That whole Asteroid M falling into the Earth sequence with the X-Men theme sung operatically? Genius! All the feels! Oh my gosh, it was amazing. There is no greater comic book team than the X-Men, in my opinion. I've always felt that way. It was X-Men and Batman that got me into comics and got many people into comics. And I think this show makes it clear that they are still the best. But we got some great Marvel cameos anyway. Silver Samurai again? What's with the Silver Samurai love? Captain America's back, this time with Iron Man in one of his old school suits. Daredevil, all the more exciting because they just debuted the new logo, which is amazing, at yesterday's Disney upfronts for the upcoming show. Also, other Marvel Knights characters, Cloak and Dagger, were there. Doctor Strange doing psychic or, some kind of magic surgery. Wakanda showed up two times. Not only were we in Wakanda, but then, of course, also communicating with President Kelly. But it was not T'Challa. It was his father, King T'Chaka, which means T'Challa is still to come, who, of course, look out, Forge, had a romance with Storm, and they were briefly married. So do we have a love triangle coming our way? And then Russian Marvel characters, Omega Red, who we saw before, but this time joined by Crimson Dynamo and Darkstar. No Red Guardian, although he, of course, is set to show up in Marvel's next season of What If. Finally, I totally called it last week because I know my X-Men as well. Jean Grey won the day by not only tapping into the Phoenix Force, but by finally connecting with Cable as his mother. And he accepted it as well. I like this interpretation of Jean Grey using the Phoenix Force. All flame. I believe we saw that with Grant Morrison. Although, come on, we got to see her in the iconic costume again at some point. It comes in different colors, but those colors aren't just for fun. They represent different things. She says the Phoenix Force is now gone, but with Jean, it's never truly gone. It's always there if she needs it. If she needs it for a fight or for a storyline. And I don't think we'll be seeing Sinister anytime soon either. He'll be back as well, but he's going to take a little bit of a break because Jean burned away all the mutant DNA he'd stolen over the centuries to remain young and powerful, leaving just the original corpse-like Sinister. It was revenge for Madeline, but they didn't bring her up this time. Instead, Morph was the one who got to show Sinister his true face. Very picture of Dorian Gray, which is a fantastic reference because, of course, that story originated in Victorian England, where Sinister came from as well. But it was fitting because Morph was also one of Sinister's victims. As for Bastion, he might have disintegrated, rejecting the X-Men's offer for redemption and rehabilitation. Wow, that was awfully big of them. I don't know if I could have done that with Bastion. I was like, he's a computer. But speaking of that, he's a computer program, AI, who has a good chance of survival, especially since he's so clever. Another great line when he said, ironic, Xavier's students never learn. Ooh, burn! Although Bastion ultimately was the one who burned. But now that's Magneto's cynical take, whereas Xavier would say, Xavier's students never give up. And, doing the right thing is never easy. It's very hard. And I'm glad that this show, while it's been very fair to the Magneto perspective, ultimately sides with Xavier, which is what the world needs not only now, but always needs. Although I do think it helps to, just as Xavier did, to listen to the other side. Because, part of the reason the other side gets so angry is that it does not feel heard and does not feel part of the solution. And so Xavier, on this show in particular, is like, what are you talking about? Of course you can be part of the solution. And I think that is a better version of Xavier, which also we should hope to see reflected in the world. So what did you think of X-Men 97 Season 1? Both as if you're an X-Men fan or if you're new to the party. Do you see why they're so amazing? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.